Friends, welcome to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. I'm sure married life shouldn't be so difficult, but marriage to Joanna, Joe, turned out to be more difficult than I could have imagined. The grumbling and complaining just seemed endless. Everything I was doing was wrong. Before we started dating, I had a lot of hobbies, mostly active recreation and sports, as well as cycling and playing football. Over the years, it all came to naught. Joe said that we couldn't afford it, that we didn't have time, or that she ordered something else for the same day. I was losing touch with more and more friends, and I didn't participate in trips and events. I was so infatuated with Joe that it took me years to realize what was going on, and it wasn't until I looked back after a few beers that I realized how much I had lost. Why marry someone if they are so perfect and then try to change them? Even my friends and relatives have become a problem. They are not educated enough, drink too much, or are too noisy and rude for Joe's feelings. She seemed proud of her ability to control our lives and everything that happens in it. There is no end to it. Earn more, work even harder, make lists of tasks. All this has become a habit for her. When we first started dating, she was caring, attentive, and quite accommodating. There were a few hints of increased demands on myself, but nothing that could cause alarm, and I was fascinated by her. Joanna Farrington Hall, in E. Farrington, she couldn't give up her maiden name in any way, was an amazing woman from a wealthy family. I am Phil Hall, of course, not stunning and not so rich, but I have achieved good results regarding myself. Decent job and income, lots of friends and hobbies, life is good. And then I met Joe and everything got even better. Tall, 1.75 meters, with long, straight blonde hair, pale skin, and graceful English appearance, Joe attracts attention. Her blue eyes seem as alive as her personality, always running around, but with a steady gaze. She is smart, determined, and understands perfectly well that she has an influence on most of the male representatives, but she knows how to divert unwanted attention. No one was as shocked as I was when she asked me out. I just couldn't figure it out. She's clearly out of my league, and I told her so. I'm sick of all these rich, arrogant assholes messing with my head. You look different, maybe kinder, and I see that you often smile and joke with your friends. I'm loving it. Next time you're going to tell me that I'm a good guy, and that's not the best reason to date. She laughed, and I was in her arms, that smile and eye contact. I couldn't resist her in any way, and she knew it. I literally took my breath away. I had to focus on breathing, and it felt like my heart was about to jump out of my chest. Despite my doubts and the fact that it was very early, I began to think that everything could work out. Joe was really pleasant company, and also very attractive. She worked hard on her appearance, dressed in designer outfits, used the services of a personal trainer, visited spas and beauty treatments. In general, spared no expense. And it worked. She continues to look even better in adulthood. Our engagement went smoothly until an incident happened with an old family friend and her ex, Richard Askew. I caught Joe when she was meeting him for drinks. They looked like pretty close friends, and he was holding her hands over the table. I was about to leave, but then I thought to hell with it, and walked over, sinking into a chair next to them. Well, that's nice. Joe's eyes widened, and she took her hands off the table. It's not what you think. I explained to Richard that we're engaged now and I can't date him again. Actually, then the only thing that bothers me is that we are holding hands and those loving eyes. Maybe it's just the wrong time and you didn't have a chance to leave me first. No, I swear, Richard is just a friend now. I needed to explain everything personally, do everything right. I love you and I want to marry you. I looked at Richard. And what can you say in your defense? He didn't seem to be in a hurry to answer, the cocky bastard. Joanna is absolutely right. I asked her out without knowing that she was engaged, and I'm glad that she thinks highly enough of me to explain everything personally. I don't want to come between you. The words made sense, but there was something I didn't like about him, and he continued. I think I'd better leave you two to sort out your differences. To be honest, I wish you both all the best. And Phil, you've got a 1 in a million chance. You're a very lucky guy. Joe looked at me. I'm sorry, I should have told you that I'm dating him. Are you telling me the truth, Joe? If it's not me you want, then you'd better deal with it now. You're all I need, please. You don't have to worry. I'm all yours. Joe seemed determined to make amends in the bedroom, and I wasn't going to complain, even embellished my feelings a little because I liked the way she made amends. It was a week before the wedding, and I was already getting tired of the fact that I was really lucky. Only my mom seemed to think I was a good deal for Joe, too. It wasn't so much the comments themselves that bothered me, but the fact that Joe seemed to be delighted with them. I was hoping to get at least some protection or support, maybe a hint that she was lucky too or that I was a great guy, but that didn't happen. Our conversations became more and more one-sided, and more attention was paid to her. At first, I put it down to the stress of the wedding. However, a lot of this was stressful for me too. My initial offer of a small celebration with close friends was rejected out of hand. The wedding went beyond our initial plans and budget, but she had to have the perfect dress, the perfect venue, and a cake, and the ring, and her second cousins should be added to the guest list, which at that time was almost 270 people. I seemed to get lost in this mess. I was often instructed, but usually ignored. I wondered if it would be noticeable if I just didn't show up, and I wondered again why she was marrying me. Despite all my fears, I still came, and the wedding went just fine, right down to the speeches. Her father's speech was more like a lecture addressed to me, about how I should support my princess in the way she is used to. Her mom was smiling at the same time, but I wasn't. I didn't expect the welcome to the family speech. Joe noticed the expression on my face and stood next to me, and I would like to drink to the fact that our two wonderful families are united by the love that Phil and I share. She gave my father a withering look as she sat back down. At least I wasn't the only one who felt disapproval. The rest of the day passed without incident. After a stormy honeymoon, we started married life, and 18 months later our first, and as it turned out, only daughter Jade was born. She was an absolute miracle for me. Joe struggled with postpartum depression and was determined that she would never go through the trauma of childbirth again. As a result, she declared that Jade would be our only offspring. Joe knew that I always wanted to have more children, but I decided not to bring up this conversation because she wasn't doing too well with motherhood. I did my best, taking on most of the worries. When Jade turned 8, Joe wanted to return to work. Her father had good connections, and he got her a job raising funds for a charity. It was only later that I found out that Richard Askew was the executive director of this charity. She had been working there for over a year when I, along with other partners and families, were invited to a summer social event. This year it was dedicated to medieval events with games and fundraising events for the charity. Most were dressed in fancy dress, the most popular of which were the knights and mistresses of the manor. To Joe's disappointment, I declined to participate in this event. She bought an outfit of the mistress of the manor with an embroidered tunic, a velvet headdress, a bowler hat, and a silk veil. There were all kinds of games, mock hand-to-hand fights with fake weapons and electronic sensors, knocking each other off logs over water, and archery competitions. Richard won the mock fencing tournament. Only 4 people could ride well enough to compete. They used foam spears, which nevertheless were quite heavy, and managed to land several blows on the sensors of the electronic shield. One guy even managed to get off his horse, although it looks like he would have fallen anyway. To tell the truth, it was all funny and fun. Then, in front of everyone, Richard rolled up to Joe and asked her for a small souvenir. She took off her veil and tied it to his spear, receiving applause. After that, flirting began in front of my eyes. I was unhappy that Joe was spending a lot of time with the boss, and I told her off. "What the hell are you up to?" She laughed. "I don't know. The young knight has won my favor." "This is not funny, Joe. Come on, Phil. Aren't you going to fight for your girlfriend in trouble, save her from a young scoundrel with a bad reputation?" "I shouldn't do this, and you don't look upset at all. On the contrary, you like it. We're married, and I thought we were devoted to each other. Calm down, it's just a joke." "Really? You two lashed out at each other, and it makes me wonder what else you can do at work." With that, I left, and if I had hoped that she would follow me, I was sorely mistaken. I left the hall without having the slightest idea where to go. When in doubt, find a pub, and I noticed one called Farmer's Rest and decided it would be quite suitable. I was sitting at the bar, still angry, drinking the first pint. By the second, I thought my reaction might be a little excessive, but that was because it was him, Richard Askew, always staying in the background. I tried to think about what I should tell Joe when I got home, but as it turned out, I shouldn't have worried. Joe wasn't there. It's scary to think where she might be, but all my texts went unanswered. She came back after midnight, but she didn't talk to me. I was determined not to ask where she was. The next day, we only murmured greetings to each other at lunch. In the evening, Joe announced that we needed to talk, and I laughed. "Why are you laughing?" "Yes, it's just that I've already heard these 4 words several times in some stories. Joe ignored my words and continued. No one, including you, has the right to control me. I admit that since we started working together, I've become close to Richard again. I don't know what I expected, but it certainly wasn't this. Did you make love to him? Don't be so uncouth. We have a history together. He has always been partial to me. So have you already made love to him? Stop saying that. I have to be honest and say that the attraction is mutual. Have you made love to him yet? You're such a child. I stared at her in silence, incredulous. You dumped me at a charity event. He was by my side when you weren't there. Oh my God, you must be joking. If you hadn't run away, this would never have happened. Oh, I doubt it, Joe. I think that spreading his legs was inevitable for him. One fight and you jump into bed with him, and you have the audacity to accuse me that it's my fault that you became a cheater. I'm not a cheater. Then what's the matter? Is it love? Are you leaving me for him? No, of course not. I love you. What then is a one-time mistake? Do you feel guilty? It doesn't mean anything. You only love me, it's just passionate love. What kind of bullshit excuse are you making up? Don't react like that, it was a mistake. We had a fight and I was upset. I'm sorry, okay? No, it's not okay, and you managed to get into this situation quite successfully to justify yourself. Why tell me about it now? I wanted to be honest and see if we could work this out. I think it's more like you wanted to throw it in my face. You're right about settling everything, getting a divorce first. You can't divorce me. You don't have any evidence of infidelity. There are no videos, no tapes, no photos. What makes you think that I need them in this country? When people don't want to be married, they can just get divorced. It can be done even via the internet, without lawyers. There's no need to prove who made love to whom. There's no difference. I don't even know if there are investigators here. On the other hand, we also have no lawsuits for alienation of affection in our country, which is also good. Otherwise, your precious charity organization could go bankrupt, and then what will the poor animals do? Not to mention Richard and his considerable salary. We're not getting divorced over this, because of this episode. Don't even think about it. If you want to see Jade again, our family has more than enough money to trick you. I looked at the consequences of the divorce. It was a nightmare. Even if I win joint custody, I will be left completely without money and will live in a box with, hopefully, real walls. How wrong I was about lawyers. Before I knew it, her father's firm had already sent us for a consultation. What it is, nowadays people cannot make a decision without the help of either a consultant, a lawyer, or both. Forget about thinking on your own. And also, why should I move out because you were the one who had an affair? It wasn't an affair, and I need time to find myself and figure out what I want. Find yourself. Really? I thought the problem was that Richard caught you with your legs spread. It won't help, Mr. Hall. Dr. Taylor allowed herself a slight frown on her usually unflinching face. Joe broke into a pause in the conversation. That's not the point, I want you, but I don't know if you can get over it. I'm not comfortable apologizing for the next 40 years. Did you apologize? I mean, I've heard the word sorry, but not once have you said it convincingly. Oh, grow up, I've apologized and we have to move on. For me, there was no remorse or recognition of the consequences. You don't see beyond yourself. If you're sorry, it's only for yourself, for not meeting your own standards, for Joanna Farrington Hall being a cheater. You don't worry about me, except by dictating terms so that we stay together. You just want to play the victim because I hurt your pride. Maybe it is. Your cheating has definitely hurt me, pride and all. But more than that, I can't accept that the one who should take care of me more than anyone else doesn't really care that much. For God's sake, it was just one time. A simple love that doesn't mean anything. I was mad at you. Great. You left us for something pointless. This is even worse. And I do not know if it was once. You could have made love to him for months. How dare you? If you can't trust me, then we're finished and we can end this. Actually, it's a good idea. Very good. That's the first thing you said that makes sense. What? Can't you be serious? I got up and went to the exit. What are you doing? Don't you dare leave me? It's still a matter of control for you, isn't it? Well, you don't control me. I'm free to leave this room and I'm free to leave you. Phil, don't you dare leave. Phil. I was waiting for a call from Dr. Taylor after I didn't show up for the next consultation. Mr. Hall, I'm checking about our session today. I'm not coming, Dr. Taylor. That's what I thought. Mr. Hall. Phil, strictly off the record, there are some traits in your wife's personality that you should be careful with. Do you mean something else besides treason? She has some narcissistic traits. She will never forgive you for what she did. None of your actions will be right. Beware of parental alienation, it's worth reading about. The conversation ended abruptly. I started reading. What I found horrified me. The described traits seemed to suit Jo, especially her sense of self-worth and superiority. The lack of empathy, the need for attention, criticism of others, and rejection of negative feedback all struck me. For the first time, I realized that I could completely lose Jade. Parental alienation describes the psychological manipulation of a child against another parent. Basically, Jade could be brainwashed and isolated from me, and that wasn't an option. The long-term consequences for the child and some practical examples are heartbreaking. Legally and financially, I would lose. None of the ideas of separation and revenge looked viable in the cold light of day. I am not a former soldier, an information technology expert, and have no friends in the lower strata of society. I am an ordinary person who is at the mercy of the court and the system. Is there any way I can avoid losing everything? And then I had an epiphany. Well, not exactly an epiphany, but a vague idea that I could stay with Jo and raise Jade together. She's almost 10 now, so I need another 6 years. I don't need to be in love with Jo, and in my opinion, I no longer need to be faithful to her, so maybe this will be a marriage of convenience. Financially, I will be much better off. I just need to stay in a friendly relationship for a few years, and I will eliminate the possibility of losing Jade. After Dr. Taylor's warning, I was really worried about what might happen if I wasn't around. Jo begged me to give her one last chance to explain everything, but I refused unless she promised to stop obstructing my access to Jade after moving in with my mom. She refused to do this and insisted that there would be no problems with access. As a result, I reluctantly went to our old house. Let's just sit down and clarify the situation. The truth is, I've always needed something more, and if it wasn't for Richard, sooner or later it would have been someone else. Then why marry me? It's obvious I love you. Idiot, thanks to you, I'm happy, safe, and contented. I get along with people, I have a lot of energy, and I love attention. I need you, but I need something else. And what you need is Richard Askew? Not necessarily, he's not bad in bed, but I can leave him if that's what's bothering you. I know you don't like him. Of course, if you leave me, in less than 30 minutes he'll be here and fuck me senseless. He's always been in love with me. Wow, now you've shown yourself in all your glory, so ruthless. Maybe you deserve each other? It doesn't have to be our end. Look at me. You won't find anyone better than me, and I will take care of your every need. But you want to make love to other guys too? There's no need to be so rude. Talking to Richard reminded me exactly what I'm missing. I wish I could be more honest with you, but I was afraid of losing you. It doesn't have to happen often, and I can be discreet. We were both silent for a long time. The consequences of the divorce made me think about them. I can come back if we open up our relationship. Jo didn't expect such a comment and looked shocked, but then a smile appeared on her face. Fine, baby, I can be your hot wife if you want to be a part of it. You can watch, or I can tell you all about it. Maybe it will help you understand. That's not exactly what I meant. I don't want to hear about what you're doing. I would like to change with other couples. Why on earth would you do that when you have me? Maybe it's my innate sense of justice, but on the other hand, it'll give you the extra incentive you seem to crave. She looked down at her body, slightly spreading her hips in a tight skirt. But baby, I don't want to share you. You don't need anything but this. I knew I had to reach out to the part of her that craved worship. Just imagine all those stallions that you can enjoy with. They will be desperate to sleep with a beauty like you. You will be the center of attention, and they will do whatever you want. I realized that she liked this idea even more than her desire to control me, so I continued my Ave Maria plan last chance. This is the only way we can stay together, and there are a few more conditions. You'll need to take an STD test before I touch you again, and any hookups will be strictly using condoms, no games without consent, and to find other like-minded couples, we will join the site. And here's another thing. Drop Richard and never date him again. You're right, I can't stand this little shit. Jo rejected the idea and made a fuss, at one point even accusing me of trying to cheat. I suppressed a laugh with difficulty, knowing that she simply did not understand the irony, and asked if she had already submitted her resignation. This is not a negotiation, Jo. Either that or I'm just leaving. Jo reluctantly agreed. She saw how adamant I was, but no doubt she thought that sooner or later she would find some way around me. In addition, she quit, saying that Dad had found her another position and swore that she would never see Richard again. I wasn't naive enough to believe her completely, but this is a concession from which I expected more resistance. I have registered on several swinger sites and have been amazed by the number of responses. The photo of Joe in an elegant evening dress attracted the attention of all ages more than the semi-naked photos and other questionnaires. We moved on to chatting with several couples online. The first couple we actually met were Dave and Gail. The meeting was normal. They were a little younger than us, very fit and attractive. Dave was very interested in Joe, but I didn't like Gail, and we left this meeting as an interesting evening, much to Joe's disappointment. At one point, we exchanged brief kisses. Joe seemed excited when I kissed Gail, although her kiss with David was longer and more exciting. After that, I matched couples based on my wife's profile. I wasn't too worried about what Joe would get. To be honest, most of them were on par with their partners, but not always. Every month or so, we met with other couples, not always for love. As a rule, the men were wonderful, and their wives were very attractive. The age was very different, from 20 to 40 years old, with different looks and characters. Of course, I got a lot of pleasure from dating. Joe's loyalty no longer mattered to me, and she enjoyed the attention of new men. This continued intermittently for several years. In a normal life, Joe's behavior improved slightly, and there were fewer complaints. She knew that I would leave if she returned to her old habits, and an uneasy truce was established between us. I spent more and more time with Jade, who, as a teenager, often quarreled with her mother, while I quietly strengthened the ties that we have. I appreciated it all the more because I was well aware of how easily it could all end. It was definitely cheaper to keep her. If we broke up, I doubt I would be able to afford to own my own property, and on top of that, I would have to do all the shopping, cook and clean, and actually pay Joe to make love to Richard Askew. Moreover, I've had intimate relationships with many attractive women that I would never approach as a single guy. I would have preferred fidelity and a monogamous relationship, but it seemed to me the best way out of the situation. I didn't love Joe as much as I used to, but our relationship was good enough. Although I began to miss having a deep connection with someone special, Joe was no longer that kind of person to me. Jade was already 13, and I just needed to last a few more years. Then I started chatting with a couple in their late 20s named Megan and Ian. The communication was comfortable and friendly. As a result, we exchanged several photos and clothes. The couple were amazing. Megan was elegant and very pretty with curly red hair, and Ian looked quite fit. Ian was friendly and interesting, and Megan was quite calm, maybe a little shy, and certainly not the kind of inveterate swingers I expected to see. We agreed to meet at the restaurant and see how things were going. Joe prepared herself by wearing a tight little black dress that showed off her figure. I was somewhat surprised by the choice of outfit and assumed that it was quite revealing. She insisted that she wanted to look decent and that she needed high-heeled shoes, since Ian is very tall. We entered an elite bar and saw them in a quiet booth. They smiled, greeted like old friends, and hugged. Ian was wearing a suit that matched my jeans and shirt. Seeing Megan in person took my breath away. The computer screen did not convey all her beauty. She was wearing a midnight blue dress that seemed to shimmer in the light of the lanterns, not too revealing, and medium-high heels. Her highlighted red hair was a mass of curls and pins, but it looked completely natural. Maybe Joe is right about the outfit. There are many smiles and confirmations that we are glad to finally meet. We exchanged the first few social phrases about how we found this place. We ordered a couple of bottles of wine, and while I tried not to look at Megan too openly, Ian looked at Joe more openly. The conversation continued, and everyone admitted that they had hardly thought about anything else all week. I can't believe we got along so well. It's more casual than I thought. It feels like we've been friends for a long time. The last thing we need is for you guys to be on edge. The others agreed with my comment. I saw the way Joe looked at Ian. If someone didn't like this state of affairs, then she looked charmed by him, and it wasn't long before she went into full flirtation mode. Megan bit her lip. It was a nervous gesture, but it drew my attention to her rather full lips. There was a dance floor between the bar and the restaurant where music was playing, and I asked Megan if she wanted to dance. She looked at Ian, who nodded in agreement. At the same time, he stood up and held out his hand to Joe. She smiled and took it without even looking in my direction. I remember very well our first touch, when Megan took my hand and I looked into her eyes. My heart jumped a little, as did my groin. I put my other arm around her waist. Is everything okay? Megan just smiled and nodded in response as we began to move slowly to the music. I could see that she was nervous, so I kept chatting. By the way, I like your dress. It's very elegant. Thanks. I was hoping you'd like it. It took me a whole damn eternity to choose. I was aiming for affection, not promiscuity and all that. Well, I would say that you have done well. You look elegant and stylish. Megan surprised me by explaining that this is the first time they've met like this. Their interest arose after meeting with old college friends, a lot of alcohol, which led to flirting, but they did not go to the end. Ian wanted to explore and experiment and convinced Megan to give it a try. I felt there was more to it than that, but I didn't want to pry too much too soon. Do you mind if I hold you close to me, Megan? No, and you can call me Meg. Everyone else does that. Okay, why don't you put your hands on my shoulders? When she did, I ran my hands over her petite waist. What do you think? It's nice, Phil. I like being with you. I bit my lip again. Just try to relax, Meg. I'm not going to do anything that you won't like. Tell me if I do, and we'll sort it out. Thank you, Phil. It means a lot. I want to trust you. And this is a great way to start something special, I hope. I hugged her and forgot about Joe and Ian for a while. Lost in this moment, I wanted to kiss her, but resisted the urge. It seemed to me that it was too early, and I hoped that it would be something worth looking forward to. We looked at each other and saw Ian and Joe kissing. His hands were also a little lower. I was amazed at how little I cared about it. After her betrayal, I never felt the same, and even if we could recover from it, her attitude ruled out such a possibility. Meg looked up at me. How do you feel when you see them kissing? I expected to feel jealous, but no. I think it's because you're in my arms. Meg smiled back. You're too cute. Perhaps this is what has been bothering me the most all week. I never doubted that I liked you, but I thought that jealousy could become irresistible. But it's not. It looks like an ordinary date that I like, but with an additional exciting note. More than just exciting, it's the same for me. I don't mind because we're together. I pulled her a little closer to me, enjoying the closeness of her body, and let my hand slide to the back of her thighs, trying to avoid grabbing her ass and feeling her breasts meet my breasts as we continued to almost dance. Ian and Joe glided over to us. Are you guys okay? I let Meg answer. Yes, it's all right. You guys are a great couple. I felt proud when Ian said that. For some reason, I really liked that we were called a couple. Meg turned to me. I can't disagree. I think so too. We sat back down in the booth while Ian and Joe continued to dance. I leaned over to chat with her to the music. Our faces were naturally close. She bent down and kissed me gently. Her lips were so soft and her perfume was intoxicating. The feeling was electric, like the first school kiss, exciting and nervous. Meg groaned softly and I continued the kiss, not caring where we were. I liked her gentle responses and the feelings they evoke. I became more and more passionate and attracted her to me, not caring where we were and unable to stop. My mouth opened completely. Her taste was so sweet and hot that I moaned. In the end, we broke off the kiss, both gasping, her breasts beating against me, and I was completely tense. Wow, this is so unusual, thank you. I'm serious, there's no hurry. We can move at the pace that suits you. We don't have to follow them. I know. We'll just do our own thing. We looked at each other and saw Joe looking at us and Ian saying, wow. Meg looked at him and blushed, pressing her face against my chest. I heard a muffled, it looks like they saw everything. Probably, yes, we were a little slow. Do you feel uncomfortable about it? No, and you? Not a bit. And I don't want to let you go. Ian and Joe joined us and we continued to talk about friends, family, travel, and work. Time flew by, confirming that we have a lot in common and have a connection. Ian interrupted his hesitation. Do you guys want to have a drink at our place tonight, or can we do it another time if it seems too hasty? Joe looked inspired, and I glanced at Meg, who nodded, biting her lip again, and said, how about we go back and see how it goes without promises? Yes, that's fair enough. Any of us can stop at any moment. Joe added with a laugh, why don't we switch partners for the duration of the trip so that no one gets lost? Of course, it sounds like a good plan. I offered Meg my hand, she took it, and I led her out of the bar, my stomach quivering with excitement and some anxiety. Joe and Ian followed me, holding hands. I noticed that the waitress was looking at us with raised eyebrows and a smile. I opened the car door for Meg, feeling a strange but excited feeling as I took the opportunity to examine her. Her dress was pulled up on her hips, and I noticed very slender legs covered in nylon. Looking back, I saw Ian's hand on Joe's ass as he led her into the car. I got into the car and couldn't resist leaning over to kiss her, wondering if I was going to get a cheek or lips. She turned around and kissed me gently on the lips. Starting the engine, we drove off, seeing that Ian had followed us. "Are you happy with tonight, Meg?" "Yes, everything was wonderful, more comfortable than I expected, but that doesn't mean I'm still not scared. I would say that there is no need to be afraid, but I'm afraid myself. You are very attractive, and I like your company. Just remember that you have everything under control." She giggled and reached out to squeeze my hand. "I like it, thank you. You simplify everything. I had so many doubts. I think Ian and Joe got along too." After a short trip, we arrived and went to their house, drank some wine at the breakfast bar, and then settled down in the living room. I was glad that Meg decided to sit next to me. We talked for a while, and I kept glancing at Meg. She really has an amazing figure. When I looked back, Ian's hand was on Joe's hip and he moved in for a kiss. I decided to do the same with Meg and started kissing. It wasn't long before Ian led Joe out the door. "I'll meet you for breakfast at 9 in the morning. Not just love, but a sleepover." I was more than happy with the prospect of spending the night with Meg, and agreed. Meg also nodded in agreement. I started kissing her more and more often, unable to stop, and then she started having serious jitters. "You're a good guy, of course, but I'm not sure I can do it." I was disappointed, but I answered, "It's okay, Meg. You need to be absolutely comfortable with what we're doing, and you need to be sure that this is exactly what you want." Then we heard the unmistakable sound of the bed creaking upstairs and realized what it meant. With that, Meg took a deep breath, stood up, gave me her hand, and led me upstairs. As we passed by one of the bedrooms, I heard my wife moaning and asking to be used harder. Meg led me into the bedroom, which was clearly the main one. She deftly unzipped the back of the dress and let it fall. I was mesmerized. In black heels, a blue transparent bra, and a thong, she looked like a vision. Her skin was so toned and perfectly porcelain. I did not forget to close my mouth so that it would not be so noticeable to stare, but she caught it. "So you like what you see?" "I more than like it. You're stunning." "Well, it looks like I've got your attention. Now it's your turn." I tried to be cool and courageous, but I felt hurried and awkward, and undressed in no more than a few seconds. Meg looked me up and down, and I felt myself blushing. Very nice. It looks like I'll get a better deal." I was delighted with this remark and went up to her to kiss her. Without any warning, Meg knelt down and began kissing all my limbs. Smiling, she licked his entire length without taking her eyes off him. I needed to stop her before I embarrassed myself, so I took her by the hands to the bed and slowly put on a condom. With great pleasure, I took off her bra and panties and began to kiss her all over. Meg moaned and wrapped her stockinged legs around my head. Her first passion was not long in coming. She was still in the same high when I moved up her body and straddled her. Our ecstasy intensified even more when I began to push. Meg writhed and moaned as I completely immersed myself in her. We continued to build up the pace. Now I was hammering into it. It was urgent, demanding, and completely frantic. Meg was breathing heavily and said that she had never been made love like this before. The shy housewife turned out to be a goddess, and I wanted more and more. It took us a while to come to our senses before making love again, rolling and trying different poses. I liked her riding pose. When she sat down like a cowboy, I admired all her beauty and perfectly formed breasts. We were woken up by the sound of the headboard hitting the wall in the next room. Ian and Joe were obviously getting to know each other again. Meg was more than happy to get the same thing as Joe. Breakfast turned into a casual conversation after the ice was broken. We exchanged opinions without going into details. It looks like Joe and Ian had a good time too, and we agreed to meet again. For 6 months, we continued to meet with Ian and Meg, and I enjoyed every meeting immensely. Joe started asking if I had feelings for Meg. I denied it, saying it was just an accident. In the end, Ian said they wouldn't be seeing us anymore. It seemed to him that Meg and I were too close. I didn't argue, admitting to myself that I was in love, and that if I had the opportunity, I would switch places with Joe in an instant. But unfortunately, that was the end of it. 4 months had passed since our last meeting, when Joe suddenly said that Ian and Meg had invited us to a party. Apparently, it was a swinger party hosted by a couple they met online. They weren't sure about that and wanted friends there in case there were too many people there. We didn't like swinger parties. We agreed that we would only change with other couples, no orgies, groups, or singles. But I wanted to see Meg again, and I agreed to go. Jo was very interested in the idea, adding that she wondered what such parties meant and that they could open up new possibilities. I was pleasantly surprised when we entered the hangout place, which is a large and secluded private house. The party was held in a relaxed atmosphere with drinks, as well as with meetings and greetings. The hosts introduced us to some of the regulars. They all seemed like nice people, but neither Ian nor Megan was in sight. Jo started chatting with a guy named Jeff. He was young and handsome, and she seemed to like him. They went to the bar and I chatted with the hosts and was introduced to another couple. 20 or 30 minutes had passed when Jo returned and said she was going upstairs to get to know Jeff better. Wait a second, this is not part of our agreement. Remember, he is single, and we only exchange with couples. But this is a swinger party. The hell with it, we stick to our boundaries anyway. I could see that she was annoyed and wondered if she could just go anyway. But then I saw her shake her head slightly towards her future lover on the other side of the room. By the time Ian and Meg arrived, she had calmed down a bit. I noticed that Meg was wearing a very revealing dress for her, short and low cut. She looked impressive, but of course did not feel comfortable. Ian was as sociable as usual, but Meg looked depressed and awkward, and I decided that this was a party that she or I would hardly like. It wasn't long before Ian took Jo back to the bar, leaving Meg and me alone. We chatted, but she looked preoccupied. The conversation was strained, devoid of the warmth that had been in our previous meetings. Do you want to leave? Just go for a ride without any obligations. Maybe get some fresh air. She looked so relieved, and then she burst into tears, and I tried to calm her down by asking what happened. Ian wants me to try group love, with a few guys. I don't want this, but Ian is very insistent on it, and insisted that we come to the party. I only agreed when Ian said you'd be here. I knew you wouldn't want me to do something that I didn't like. Wait, it doesn't make sense. Why would Ian invite me, knowing that I would refuse? It dawned on both of us at the same time, and Meg spoke first. Maybe he had something planned for Jo. They corresponded to come to an agreement. We went to look for them, but they weren't in the bar, and I turned to Meg, shaking my head. Looking at my watch, I realized that at least 45 minutes had passed since they left together. I quickly ran up the stairs and was already moving down the hallway when Jo staggered out of the bedroom door, trying to pull down her dress, and we almost collided. The door was open, and I saw Ian and Jeff inside, and immediately a drop of liquid slime fell on the floor between her legs. At least she had the decency to look embarrassed. I stared at her in fury. Is this my fault too, Jo? This is my body, and I will do whatever I want with it. Don't be shy, but I'm leaving. I turned on my heel, bypassing Meg on the stairs and headed for the exit. I could hear the click of heels behind me as I descended the stairs and crossed the tiled hall. I turned to tell Jo exactly where she could go, but I saw Meg looking back at me. She was panicking. Her eyes were wide. Can I come with you? I looked up at the landing and saw a third man, along with two others, leading Jo into the bedroom. I nodded to Meg and turned to leave. The trip was quiet. We talked a little bit about what we were going to do, and came to the conclusion that both Ian and Jo are narcissistic assholes. In my case, I thought Jo would always try to win, and would not accept any balance in our relationship. Meg's assessment was more harsh. Ian is just a jerk. This made me laugh, exactly the level of personality analysis that I could understand, and for which I did not need a consultant. Can I take you home? I'm not really in the mood for company. Only if you're the only one who's going to be okay, and if you take me to my mom. I don't want to see Ian in the near future. I left her, promising to be in touch, and returned to the house alone, acutely aware of the silence and darkness. Jo returned home the next day. I didn't know if she would try to argue or apologize. Don't even worry, Jo, it's over between us. Why? It's just love. We've done it with dozens of people. What's the difference? I've had enough, 3 guys and all night long. You seem to be saying that you can always get more. By the way, you're right about that. You're attractive. A lot of men want you. You've won. Congratulations. She seemed to be barely holding back a smile. As for the liquid, you could have killed us both, you idiot. These people are making love. A lot. You'll be lucky if you just get the clap and nothing worse. Her face turned white at this remark. Have you already made love without a condom? I need you to be honest. No, this is the first time. I'm sorry, I'm upset because you ruined my fun with Jeff. Nonsense, you and Ian have arranged everything. Used Megan to distract me while you both got what you wanted. It's always the same with you. You're like a spoiled child, and that's never enough. You need to go to the clinic and get checked out. I won't touch you anymore. Joe didn't take my departure very well. She started stalking me and wouldn't let me see Jade. At some point, she tried to force her way into my parents' house, where I was staying, ranting that I was mistreating her. I tried to kick her out without using force. Fortunately, my mom didn't show restraint. She slapped her in the face and literally threw her out, adding, "You need help, Joe. I'm not sure you're well." This remark provoked another barrage of offensive language from Joe. I gave Joe money for Jade, but she referred me to a child support agency. I couldn't help laughing when they told me that I should pay her less, and she got so angry that she threatened the administrator and received a warning from the police. I went to pick up Jade, but Joe said she was with her friends. I was stunned to see Richard Askew come in from the living room, as cool as a cucumber. What the hell? Like I said, if you leave me, Richard makes love to me, and here he is. He's going to take me upstairs soon to use me until I pass out. Again. I turned to Richard, who had a smug expression on his face. I was definitely going to beat the shit out of him. And then I remembered Dr. Taylor's warning from many years ago. Maybe it's a setup, a trap. Joe hated losing at anything, and if I got arrested for assault, Joe would keep Jade, like everything else. Of course, she wouldn't have gone that far, isn't it? Joe continued. I'm sure Richard will be a great father for Jade. He will be only too happy to adopt her. Finally, I noticed that her phone, partially hidden on a shelf, was undoubtedly recording. I laughed, almost hysterically. Nice try, Joe, but I won't touch a single hair on his rich little head. You're quite the thing, and you both really deserve each other. By the way, does Richard know that you made love to several guys at the same time and without protection? Richard almost choked. As I left, I casually added, You'd better sign up for a disease clinic, buddy. You don't want anything to corrode you. While Joe was making love, I received a number of abusive messages and videos. Her comments were very instructive. Look what you've done, but you could be making love to this right now. Never mind. I have a real man, and he is much better and bigger than you. It seemed strange to me that she would waste time texting if she was doing so well, and I didn't care anymore, as long as Jade was safe. If you give me Jade, you'll have more time to make love to whoever you want. Although I heard that Richard has moved out, so you have an empty seat, so to speak. With that, she hung up the phone, no doubt amazed that 2 men had already rejected her. The divorce was a nightmare. It dragged on longer and longer. She resisted and made up all sorts of nonsense about me having affairs, and that I was violent. She had no evidence, and some of the allegations were so ridiculous that the family court, social workers, and lawyers began to understand what she was like. Anyone who disagreed with her received a barrage of insults. I realized that the Joe I was living with was just a simplified version of her. Even Joe's parents began to worry about their princess's erratic behavior, but it was also my fault, because I abandoned her. Now, at the age of 14, Jade had no choice, but the family court listened to her wishes, and she wanted to stay with me. I continued to do most of my parenting duties without missing a single event, class, or parent-teacher meeting, and turned into a teen taxi service. Joe took this choice as a betrayal. After all, how could anyone not choose her? At the custody hearing, she lost her temper when my lawyer asked for a psychological evaluation of Joe to ensure Jade's safety. I thought Joe was going to explode. She started swearing right in the middle of the court and completely lost her temper. She thought I was a bastard, just like my lawyer. To be honest, she might be right, but he was on my side. She was found in contempt of court again when she continued to cause problems with my access to Jade. I kept a log, and I had a chain of her messages as proof. The judge warned her that one more such case and she would be imprisoned. At the last hearing, she lost her temper again when the judge confirmed joint custody and called him a lost old fart, for which she was prosecuted and fined. Over time, I spent more and more time with Jade. Joe seems to have lost interest in parenting and Jade's bad behavior, although I haven't seen anything like it. All I had to do was pay off the mortgage for another 18 months, and then we could sell the house or Joe would have to buy out my share. Another thing I've been doing is saving small amounts of money over the years, and it's helped a lot. The day after receiving the confirmation of the divorce, my doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw a red-haired vision. Hello. I think TNBN is not interested in dating a recently divorced and reformed swinger who wants only one thing, to settle down with a proper and strictly monogamous man. I think we have someone who fits that description, if you want to come in. The truth was that I kept in touch with Meg, and during our divorces, we supported each other. Ian seemed to be following the same path as Joe, and like Joe, he periodically asked for forgiveness, and then returned to his previous behavior. After that, I hardly saw Joe, who only appeared briefly at Jade's 16th birthday party. I thought that after being apart for so long, we might have a reasonable conversation. I'd think about coming back to you, Phil, if you were begging. You know that I'm the best thing you've ever had, and don't even try to say that you don't miss me. As I was leaving, I replied, "You're right, Joe, it would be completely pointless to tell you that." The next time I saw her at the train station when we were escorting Jade to university, I was there with Meg. As the train was pulling away, I heard Joe say to her, "I could take him away from you if I really wanted to, but I like all the other men too much, and his ego can't handle it." Meg smiled sweetly. "Oh, darling, you really are very angry and completely disconnected from reality, aren't you?" Meg turned and took my hand, and we led the stroller away. Jade came back to me and Meg all the holidays, partly because she doted on her stepbrother, and we actually lived happily ever after.